Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Elizabeth Bowles and I am a bookkeeper and a certified QuickBooks Online Pro Advisor that has been helping construction business owners save time, save money, and scale profitable businesses so they can build the life of their dreams. So this week I'll be talking about contractor business tips on how to raise a profit and how you can make it work for your business so you can raise your prices, you can scale and create the business that goes just beyond surviving, and more actually into thriving, I would say. So before anything else, let's jump into the basics so we can, talk about all the terminology and concepts all together. So the first term we want to know is the revenue. The revenue is what keeps your business going. It's the money you collect from your clients, and without it, your business is just basically a hobby. So think of revenue as a life force for your business, like a gas in your car, right? There's no movement without the gas in your car. So the next concept we need to look at is the cost of goods sold, or your direct labor. And it's the amount you pay for anything that gets the job done. So it's your materials, it's your subcontractors, it's your labor contract for the job, it's the equipment rental, it's maybe some permits. So anything that goes into a job, that's all direct cost, that's all the cost of goods sold. And then if you are not sure about what really goes into the cost of goods sold direct cost, you are welcome to download my chart of accounts for contractors. I will link it below under the video. It's a free template to download. So the formula is very simple. Everyone knows it. Revenue minus direct expenses equals gross profit. So if you have received $20,000 in for a project, and you spend $10,000 in direct costs that were all project related, $10,000 is what you have left to spend on your profit and overhead. Yes, that's the thing that everybody's missing all the time, unfortunately. You have so many business expenses that need to be covered, and it cannot come out of your profit. So all of those variables you need to consider to arrive at net profit point, they all have to be taken care of. So the examples are usually your advertising, your insurance, your administrative labor, your fuel, your meals, everything that is not supposed to be just the cost of doing business. No, this has to be paid by someone, and that cannot come out of your profit. This is why it's so important to focus on the gross profit, because there's just way too many payables to cover, including your own salary that I'm sure nobody is giving themselves. So the most often question that I usually get from new clients is, where does all my money go? I was paid X amount of money for this project. How come I'm barely even breaking even? And this is a common problem with my clients. That's why they, from the beginning, want me to clean up their books and see what seems to be missing at the time. And the answer usually is that gross profit was not considered during the bid, nor were those expenses like overhead costs. And a customer can pay you millions, but if your expenses are just as much, then you'll just find yourself digging into a messy pit of debt and breaking even. So here's how I have been able to help my clients fix those problems, is that at first we look at their books because we want to see what are the real expenses, what is their job costing. We also look at the payout schedule. This is to ensure that you're not rushing to pay your employees and your subcontractors before you receive at least some sort of deposit from your client. And looking at those variables, we can determine if the estimates were done correctly, or if we need to set up some sort of job costing systems and processes that would actually help us track those costs, and we can see where the disconnect really happened. Information is power, and when you look at the numbers and really look at the story behind them, we'll be able to craft out the solid game plan instead of just using the numbers at the end of the year for the tax prepper. It's just a waste, because we could have been using those numbers to get better results throughout the year. So now that we have all the terminology and initial steps laid out, we can move further on why the gross profit is so important and why having 50% profit margin is the key to making sure your construction business succeeds. The first thing that you need to remember is that setting a goal of 50% profit margin is pretty huge, and it requires major improvements in your terms. But the good news is that you are the business owner and you actually have the say about those terms. So you have a say on when a customer pays, how much a deposit is being required, potentially what incentives customer could receive if they choose to pay earlier and in full, and what penalties are going to happen and interest if they pay late. So when you set those boundaries and instruct in all of your contracts, all the details will be included, you're positioning yourself further into managing a 50% gross profit in the long run. And it doesn't happen overnight, but practicing those steps will really help you. And don't forget the second thing is that you just have to stick to it. It's easy to allow customers to pay late, for instance, especially when you're desperate for some cash flow and income. And I know it's tempting, trust me, we've all been there, but if you don't stick to your guns, you might as well say goodbye to that 50% gross profit, which is the goal in the first place that everybody should strive to achieve. So I once had a client who didn't want to break through this habit until he actually started accumulating a lot of debt. And it happened because most of the clients were paying late, and because the project started out without a reasonable down payment. So it finally gave him the clarity that he has to stick to his contract and make sure that clients pay up on time and completely. So what does 50% gross profit really mean? If we talk in simple terms, it's basically doubling your prices in order to make sure that you cover the rest of the overhead, and at the same time you make a good profit. All those expenses, internet, software for communications, paying yourself and others, petrol and gas to use to drive to those job sites, and other costs. And the crazy part is that to reach the 50% margin, you have to apply 100% markup. And you hear a lot of people are saying 50% gross margin, and you're thinking that 50% is your markup, but that's incorrect, because there's a difference between a margin and a markup. So to arrive to that 50% margin, you have to do 100% markup. You would say, you're crazy, Elizabeth, there's just no way I can win a project with that kind of markup. Clients just won't do it. And I can tell you that many of my clients do that exact thing, and they are very happy, and they have clients who are paying that kind of prices. And the crazy part of it is that, of course, they're having way less jobs throughout the year than when they had the triple, but they earn more money than when they had the triple amount of jobs. And that's the goal, to choose the right clients to get to that point. And of course, this is the fastest way to figure out the markup. If you want the longer way, there's a lot of analytics that you can perform, figure out what your overhead percentages are, what your desired profit percentages are, and come up with the markup regarding this. But you can go this route, and your bookkeeper can definitely help you that. And I know it seems like a very scary task, because it might mean that you have to draft those contracts in a lot of detail, in that you have to abide to those rules. And most importantly, you would have to raise your prices. Let's talk about raising your prices. I get why it's scary. You're afraid that customers might say no to the price hike and that they may just go over to your competition, and maybe that because they're paying such a price, they will have such insanely high expectations from you. But let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to raise your rates? And if yes, what was the worst thing that happened? Bear in mind that you are a professional, your customers trust you, and in order to establish that higher authority in the industry, a price increase is just inevitable. So if you let me give you a non-construction example to illustrate this. Why do you think people purchase iPhones? When they know that after about 10 years, the battery gets really bad and the new model is coming out, and really, the power is not really that much better than the cheaper Android, for example. You're paying for the name, for the simplicity behind iPhones, because they get the job done without all the fluff and hard to understand apps, unlike other providers. So to put it simply, position yourself like an iPhone or a Starbucks, where people continue to go purchase overpriced coffee when they can just simply make it at home. And the price wouldn't matter if you establish yourself as an authority figure in that industry in your location. And when you provide that epic quality service and you have a track record of that great value, it's truly scary. I've had to do that on my own in the past, and even my teammate has had to impose price raises on their own services. So you just need to understand that as your value increases, so does your rate. And that's a solution to, the fear of that 50% being way too high. It's important to create a solid business mindset that allows you to portray this confidence when announcing your rates. And normally, I like to stick to my numbers in construction, but I find that mindset is a huge block when I'm performing the advisory services, because you can advise all you want, but if a person is having this block of not trying things out, that's when everybody gets stuck. And the questions I like to ask is that, do you believe that your business is worth double than what you're currently charging? Are you confident in the value that you're bringing to the table? And what makes you different from your competitors? If you haven't answered those questions yet, that would be a good time right now before you start crunching numbers with your bookkeeper. And I would actually write them down. It really helps you visualize it and have that big picture in front of you. And if you answer no to those questions, then if you can't really find the social proof that you are different from your competitors, then there's a simple solution. You just go to your previous clients and ask what really stood out in your services. It helps when you can't find answers themselves, then to just ask, people that you actually helped. And chances are it's, the answers are right there all along, and you just had to believe in yourself. And it's such a cliche, and I know it's very cheesy, but really, how can others believe in you if you don't even believe into your business and your services? So in the next process of raising your rates to that 50% gross margin is knowing your target audience. You have to know who you're trying to sell, because if you continue to sell your projects to those DIYers and home improvement expert, chances are that you are gonna get that question, well, when I researched it, and if I did it myself, it would only cost me XYZ, so why are you charging so much? And knowing to whom you're trying to sell really helps on avoiding those know-it-all and customers who keep changing their minds until you're out of cash with all the job order changes lined up That's not what we want. We need to target customers for whom value is important. That value of hard labor that's done by construction workers, the value of the unique home design that they're trying to have for their forever home, the value that it costs to finish everything on realistic timelines. And with COVID happening, or the pandemic and the weather changes, it all adds up. And I feel like you are going to have way less rejections when you focus on that kind of target customers. So up next, don't just adjust the cash that's coming in, adjust the cash that's coming out. So the first thing, the easiest thing that you want to look is your expenses. So when you look at your overhead, try to figure out what is there that can be out of the pictures. Subscriptions that aren't even being used, tools or equipment that aren't utilized, and you are just spending way too much money fixing it, repairing, and maintenance when you can just rent them easier. Office space that isn't used, or maybe your admin staff could work remotely to save on office rentals. So if you are 100% serious about achieving a 50% gross profit, then you need to scale back on expenses as necessary. Some of us have a big dream about driving a shiny new Ferrari on the highway, but that will come eventually. For now, we start small and we sacrifice if we have to. So lastly, I would want to talk about making your money work for you. When you're finally on the right track of hitting that 50% gross profit goal, it's good to, like we talked, sit down with your bookkeeper and look through your numbers. Make sure that you have the right mindset, raise your rates, target those right paying customers, adjust your expenses. And the final step is making your money work, which means being very smart with it. You would want to reinvest part of it. So what are the good ways to reinvest? Is first, I would say delegate more tasks to others so you can concentrate on more money generating activities such as marketing and networking for your business, and maybe even increase the pay of the existing employees who are doing, of course, a great job, so they don't go run into the competitors for the higher pay. I would also maintain a profit account where you would put at least 1% for profits, and don't use that unless you have a very big emergency. So that's a good fund to have. You can always invest into new equipment or assets or advertising and marketing. It's also not a bad idea to set aside some money into some charity work because you're running a business with a purpose. So that is it for today. Please let me know in the comments what are the things that you have been doing to raise your profit. And don't forget to like this video if you found this information helpful, and subscribe not to miss more of my content. So thank you for watching.